crisis that the bank was headed on the wrong ethical course, but also because it's so unusual to learn anything at all about the inner workings of Goldman Sachs. When people leave Goldman, they tend to do it quietly. Though the firm's gold-plated reputation took a big hit after the 2008 financial crisis, it's still regarded as the smartest, most profitable, and politically well-connected firm on Wall Street and the toughest place to get a job. Now, on the eve of publishing a book about his experiences at Goldman, Greg Smith is talking for the first time about what led him to leave the firm and to do it in such a public way.
I literally wanted to hit the board of directors over the head and say, listen, I was proud of Goldman Sachs. I worked here for a long time.
So an op-ed resignation, you hoped it would be a wake-up call?
I really did, because there are a lot of people who acknowledge these things internally, but no one is willing to say it publicly. And my view was the only way you force people to change the system is by saying something publicly.
At the time he left Goldman Sachs, Greg Smith was 33 years old and making roughly $500,000 a year as a vice president, a mid-level position in the division of Goldman Sachs that trades securities for hedge funds, pension funds, and other big investors. He'd been at the firm for about 12 years and could hardly have scripted a more dramatic exit. Integrity, it is eroding, he wrote in the New York Times. The environment now is as toxic and destructive as I've ever seen it. It makes me ill how callously people talk about ripping their clients off.
You know, this might be hard for people at Goldman Sachs to understand, but I left the place. I put a lot of my heart and soul into it. I don't view it as a betrayal. I actually think the leaders of Goldman Sachs today don't have the long-run interests of the institution at heart.
Did anybody within the firm know you were going to be leaving?
No.
So the first time many people within Goldman Sachs learned you were leaving was when they opened up the New York Times and saw this op-ed.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of the op-ed was not to do any destruction.
I think some people aren't going to believe that. To not give notice to a company you worked for 12 years and in the most public way possible on the page of the New York Times to say that they're going against all the values that they once held, how can that not be seen as a betrayal?
Well, it's true. I mean, I think the company is going against the values it once held.
Join a culture of excellence.
With a reputation for integrity. Goldman Sachs.
For years, Greg Smith was one of the company's true believers. He was selected to appear in this 2006 recruiting video in which he talked about the business principles Goldman teaches to every new employee.
One of the principles I really like is about reputation, how important our reputation is. And that really comes to integrity, how important integrity is within the firm.
Born and raised in South Africa, Smith was an economics major at Stanford University when Goldman recruited him as a summer intern in 2000 and hired him the following year. Smith rose through the ranks at a time when Goldman's revenues from trading increased fivefold in 5 years. It was the result of a boom in complex financial products and a loosening of financial regulations that enabled Goldman and other banks to vastly increase profits by doing transactions for their clients while trading with their own money as well.
Goldman Sachs and other firms on Wall Street started learning how to use the information they were getting from their clients in order to bet with their own money, at times betting against their clients. You know, that's a real change mentality from how do we do what our client wants to do, not how do we take advantage of what the client's doing to make money for ourselves.
Smith's job was to sell derivatives, not the complicated bets that nearly blew up the financial system in the collapse of 2008, but more straightforward, openly traded products like options to buy stock or commodities. The problem, he says, is that inside Goldman's offices, the promotions and big money went to people who sold complex products with unseen risks and hidden fees.
So what Wall Street will do is they will approach one of these philanthropies or endowments or teachers' retirement pension funds in Alabama or Virginia or Oregon, and they'll say to them, we have this great product that is going to serve your needs. And it looks very alluring to these investors, but what they don't realize is that up front, they're immediately paying the bank $2 million or $3 million because of their lack of sophistication.
So they don't say to the client, the price you're paying for us to execute this trade is $1 million?
That's a huge part of the problem. Not at all.
How can it be that the client doesn't understand what the bank is making?
These are very complicated derivative securities which takes a PhD in physics or in engineering to understand. And there are pension funds and mutual funds that represent people's 401ks and retirement savings that are trading the most complex instruments out there without fully understanding them.
So did the people you work with want unsophisticated clients?
Getting an unsophisticated client was the golden prize. The quickest way to make money on Wall Street is to take the most sophisticated product and try to sell it to the least sophisticated client.
Smith says he first heard of a very sophisticated product called Abacus in 2010, when the SEC accused Goldman of misleading investors who bought it. Goldman paid a record $550 million fine to settle the charges. Goldman Chairman Lloyd Blankfein was grilled about that deal and others by the Senate Subcommittee on Investigations. Committee Chairman Carl Levin wanted to know why clients should trust Goldman if it was recommending they buy securities that the company was betting against.
You are betting against the very product you are selling, and you're just not troubled by it.
I'm sorry, I can't endorse your characterization.
CEO Blankfein and other Goldman executives testified that when the firm does certain types of transactions with institutional investors, it's understood that the company doesn't have the same responsibility it does when it's acting as a financial advisor.